providers need to provide to the developers? Well, there are lots of things they can provide. The more they provide, the more there are ways to monetize the application. The most basic stuff is, of course, just to provide access to the traditional telephone network, because as of today, if you want to launch a successful software-based application, at some point you will need to interconnect to the PSTN network if you want to make it reachable from a mobile phone, or if you want to make it reachable from a traditional phone. So that's one thing. But that's just the basic stuff. After that, you can provide data such as CDRs. You can provide, the more you provide to the software developers, the more they can monetize based on that. If you provide location information, well, based on, of course, privacy restrictions. But yeah, typically CDRs. But there are all kinds of information you could provide to make an application more interesting. So.
What we're looking for mainly is higher quality. That's the main thing we're looking for. So we've been working the past 2 years, and we've seen a lot of improvement in the quality. But now it's reached a point where it's very usable, and the only thing missing right now, I think, it's more consistency in the call quality. Voice over IP has had a bad reputation about voice quality, but now I think we caught up, and all that needs to be done is have very consistent call quality. Sometimes we have a user calling Taiwan, and he gets a bad call, and that's really bad for everybody when that happens. So just having better call quality is
I agree with both of these. I mean, there's a whole layer of things that you can choose to either expose or not expose, right? I mean, you can give us triggers to start and stop calls. You can give us methods to add legs to or remove legs from a conference call. You can give us, if you want, and here's an avant-garde idea, information about parts of the signaling, whether it's in-band or out-of-band signaling, that might be useful to application developers to do things with. You can give information about not only providing better quality on the network, but if you have algorithmics that determine how your routing works, and we might be interested in seeing that. That might become a price point and something that we leverage as a software application. The last couple of things I've named, I think, are impossibilities for any conventional carrier to expose to us right now, but they're technically doable. All of those things could be made available in real time in a way that we could use them as application handles, right? I mean, and this is just like way off the deep end to suggest most of these things, but in the hands of an interested community of developers, those things could become parts of some type of application. I think what matters most, actually, I think the real answer is access. Access is what developers need. Access to the public phone network, which for 100 years was a closed socialist asset that has only recently in any way become accessible to anybody other than people who've had master's degrees in telecom. The thing that we need is we don't just need the access, we need access in a way that encourages experimentation. Right, so that there doesn't, for example, have to be, say, a contract signed before we can experiment and prototype an application. And that's another thing that over the last 15 years in software development has become very clear, is that you have to set the environment such that developers can experiment, otherwise applications don't come to light. And that environment of experimentation would be probably the single most helpful thing.
Also to complement my previous, when I say as much as possible, it's really because I believe sometimes you don't know in advance what people will do with the data you provide access to. And so our opinion, at least, is to provide access to as much as we can from our network in real time. And sometimes we see that a nice application gets launched because of this new information we provide. It's difficult to know in advance what type of application they will launch. You have startups launching every week. They are more innovative than the one after the other. Some fail, okay. There are some failures, but some succeed and might become the next Skype or might become a big success. And the more access we give them to the network, the more they can do. So that's really our opinion.
Yeah, that's very much the way we see it as well. The more you open yourself up to a set of new applications, the more you make those available on the technology side to the developer community and on the consumer side, to your broad base of consumers, and then strike a partnership with the application developer community or with the specific developing companies, the more those new applications will be taking up in the marketplace, and the more all parties actually will start benefiting, right? And all parties being, yourselves, the software community, as well as the users. And ultimately, those are the real winners.
Yes, I'd like to carry this a little bit further. Context, I'm a software developer as well. I'm trying to innovate in different areas. But I do think that we have to remember that the carriers in and of themselves don't have complete control over this situation. I mean, they are regulated entities, and they have to deal with CALIA, 911, other regulatory issues. So some of this is granted due to that historical baggage. But one of the things that I think we have to be also, and I guess it's an extension to the previous question here, is the way I would word it, I guess, is not so much what do you want from the carriers, but what should be expected of the public switched network that is required as key features of that network. And one example I'll give you is caller ID. Right now, if you go back 10 years ago, caller ID was trusted. If I got a call in and it said that it was from the White House, I would be amazed, right? Today, if I got a call and it said it was from the White House, I wouldn't be amazed at all. And that's just a simple example, but is that, for instance, number authentication or endpoint authentication, is that something that you're expecting the network to have, or is that something that is now out the window?
Well, it's one of the key features. I think what we see is that the consumers will be more receptive, right, to take calls if caller ID is there. If you provide more information, caller ID being one of those elements, and as long as you can provide it within the regulatory constraints that exist in each of the countries or each of the states, then you basically will be able to exponentially enlarge the number of applications that can be developed and can be made available. And at least we saw in the Jaduka network is that we actually require from the partners we work with that caller ID gets passed through, because we have seen that if that is the case, that the consumer is much more open and receptive to taking that call than not taking it. And so it really does open it, and it actually creates, significant more business opportunity.
There's a question here, and then Carlos, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, my question was, as software-based telecoms move closer and closer to the end-user consumer, to many regulatory bodies, you're becoming more and more like a carrier. And there's issues like number spoofing and other things that some of these agencies have concerns about. So my question to each of you is, to what extent is that both a concern to you, or is that also an opportunity? I know you spoke a little bit about numbering issues. I was just curious about your perceptions on that.
Our point of view on that is very clear. I think it's a very important matter. All the voice over IP players are getting more and more regulated. So our approach on that is, like I said in the very beginning, is that we want to be a real telco, and we are a real telco with licenses in all the countries where we operate. And the service we provide to other service providers who do not have a license, to protect them, our intention is to have services that say powered by Voxbone, and Voxbone is taking the legal responsibilities for portability in 911, not in 911 because we are inbound only, but all the legal restrictions that apply or regulatory obligations, we are happy to take them for us, and then the application that's developed using our service doesn't have to worry about that because it's powered by Voxbone officially. It's a Voxbone service branded by another company. That's our approach.
Yeah, the massive regulatory mechanisms that surround telecom existed long before software development did, and will probably exist forever. So I think the answer to your implicit question is, as we start to look more like carriers, we'll have to obey those regulations. And I mean, there's an implicit question in the back too. I mean, does the injection of software into all of these telecom companies actually contribute to, say, the deterioration of what caller ID means? You know, does that take away from the integrity of what caller ID means? And I mean, yeah, I think we may push. I mean, I think that we all have, as all of us that are software developers in this room, I mean, we tend to behave in a way that we look at what tools are available to us and then we push on those, right? And so if different parts of ISUP are available to us programmatically, you're going to see people try to do stuff, you know, whether it's ill-advised or not with that, to see if they can, you know, that's just how it's going to be.